This is the Chatham Rev 2 ST from Retrospec, and with an MSRP of $900, this is one of the most affordable e-bikes that we've tested. So is it the budget-friendly cruiser for you? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome back to Electric Bike Report. I'm John, and we'll get started with the Chatham Rev 2 ST in just a sec. But first, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can see every new review as soon as it drops. We release new content a couple times a week, and we've got some new and different things in the works that I don't think you're gonna wanna miss. But let's get into the details here. First things first, we don't usually recommend e-bikes below the $1,000 mark, just because there tend to be some big sacrifices in specs, performance, and quality. After all, it's a lot easier to make a worthwhile bike at $1,200 than it is at $900. We perform a series of standardized tests as a part of every one of our reviews, and I'll save all the specifics of those for later, but I will let you know right up front that this bike did a really solid job, and we found that it just had a much better overall feel than we expected for the price. Basically, we think this bike is a great purchase, and it's priced at a level that makes it really accessible to just about everyone. This is a beach cruiser or cruiser style e-bike that really prioritizes comfort with many of its features. The saddle is a big deal here. It's big and cushy and supportive, but the riding posture is really great too. It's very upright, which makes it comfortable for long rides, and it also gives you really great visibility. The curved handlebars with rubber grips have a nice ergonomic feel, and while there's no suspension here, the 26-inch by 3-inch fat tires help to make up for that by absorbing a lot of the bumps. All in all, it's a really great package of features that we still found comfortable after a solid couple hours in the saddle. The Chatham Rev 2 ST includes a 350-watt rear hub motor that uses a cadence sensor to engage. Retrospec doesn't provide any details about its peak wattage or torque output, but we're guessing both of those figures are actually on the high end. 350 watts of nominal power isn't all that much when compared to 500 or 750 watt motors, but this one actually felt pretty powerful, especially when it came to climbing hills. We'll talk about our formal hill test results soon, but I tested it in some locations other than our go-to test spot, and I was really impressed. But let's keep things moving and run through the bike's specs and features. It uses an external 36-volt, 360 watt-hour battery tucked in behind the seat post. Neither the bike nor the battery are UL certified at the time of filming, but our contact told us that all Retrospec e-bikes should be both UL 2271 and UL 2849 certified in early 2024. The bike has a Shimano tourney drivetrain with a 42-tooth chainring and a 7-speed 14 to 34-tooth cassette, as well as a KMC chain. There's a mechanical disc brake system included that uses 180mm rotors. The brake levers for that are made by Star Union, but the calipers and rotors are from Tektro. The cockpit is super simple. There's a throttle and a control pad with LED indicators on the left handlebar and an over-the-bar thumb shifter on the right. And then the Chatham Rev 2 ST comes with a battery-operated headlight and tail light. There's a chain guard to help keep your pants clean, and there are mounting points for a cargo rack, a front basket, and fenders, although those things are not yet available on Retrospec's website, but they should be soon. This is, of course, the step-through version of the bike, but there is a high-step model available as well. The ST has a standover height of 19 inches to make it a bit easier to get on and off the bike, and the whole bike weighs 59 pounds, including the 6-pound battery, although that's pretty easy to remove. There are two color options with the ST. We have Sea Mist, that includes all of the aluminum trim with us here, but there's also Overcast Gray that includes black trim. That's enough yapping though, let's go see how the bike stacked up in our testing. The Chatham Rev 2 ST is a Class 2 e-bike with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, and we brought the bike up to that limit to test its brakes. We brought it up to speed, applied the brakes, measured how far it traveled before coming to a complete stop, and then repeated that process 3 times. The average between the 3 super consistent results, by the way, was 22 feet 6 inches, which is quite a bit better than we expected considering the bike's weight and the mechanical brake system here. Just for perspective, we don't have a ton of other cruiser style bikes with mechanical brakes to compare the Chatham's results with, but if we include commuters, city bikes, and folding bikes with mechanical brakes, the average stopping distance is 23 feet 4 inches, and that's about 10 inches beyond what we saw from this test. Tektro makes solid brakes, so that's likely a big contributing factor here, but I think the 3-inch wide tires helped out a lot too. That's definitely on the big side when it comes to most types of bikes, and I think the added rolling resistance helped out a bit as well. Bottom line, the Chatham Rev 2 ST is starting things off strong with our testing. We were really happy with the brakes here, and they are definitely safe and effective. The next thing on our list is our speed test, where we determine the Chatham Rev 2 ST's maximum speeds in each of its 5 pedal assist settings. Let's take the bike out for a spin and see what happens, and then we can test the throttle to find out how quickly it brings the bike up to its top speed. All right, we are here on the Retrospec Chatham Rev 2 to do a speed test, and I'm going here with just my own pedal power, about 9.5 miles per hour, something like that, maybe up towards 10, periodically. But let's go up to PAS1 and see what happens. Now, I am not feeling anything. Okay, now the motor's engaging. Definitely a little bit slow to pick up there. Feeling a little bit of power, not a whole lot. I am going to shift up to 4th gear here. So let's see what kind of a difference this makes. Looks like maybe about a mile per hour difference. Yeah, we're going kind of around 10.5 miles per hour, maybe up towards 11 at times. Let's go up to PAS2. Okay, there we go. Up to 5th gear. Definitely feeling a lot of help there. And I am going to be kind of soft pedaling in this test, but just really want to see what sort of the preset speed limits are with the cadence sensor. Yeah, shifted up to 6th gear here. And we are cruising kind of between, well, right around 14.5 miles per hour, I'd say. All right, let's go up to PAS3. Shift up to 7th gear, which is the maximum. Quite a lot of power in this setting though. Like, this is definitely going to get you where you're going. Looks like we're going to go kind of about 17.5, 18 miles per hour. I will get around the bend here before we take a final read. Okay, yeah, about 17.5. Let's go up to PAS4. Oh, starting to ghost pedal now, which I don't really mind here, but we are landing kind of around 19.5 here from the looks of things, and then we'll finish things off in PAS5. And this is a Class 2, but it does look like we're exceeding the 20 mile per hour limit, at least going by the app here, so we're landing kind of right around 21.5 miles per hour. All right, let's go see how the throttle performs. All right, we are back on the Chatham Rev 2 to see how the throttle performs, doing an acceleration test from 0 to 20. Let's go ahead and hit that in 3, 2, 1 now. All right, kind of slowly building and picking up here. I mean, it's steady, so that's good. And let's see, getting up toward 20, 19, 20. Okay. So with a cadence sensor and pre-programmed speed limits, I kept my pedaling pretty relaxed so that I could more easily identify those. I started off without the motor and hit 10 miles per hour, but I could have gone faster pretty easily. The battery placement behind the seat post helps the bike to feel quite a bit lighter than it is. In PAS1, my speed went up to a max of 10.8 miles per hour, so pretty subtle there, but PAS2 made a big difference and carried me up to 14.7 miles per hour. I hit 17.8 in PAS3, 19.6 in PAS4, and then I was surprised to reach 21.6 miles per hour in PAS5. There's usually a slight discrepancy between the app I was using and the speed shown on the bike when there is a display, but the Chatham Rev 2 clearly exceeded the 20 mile per hour limit. And I'd like to see that brought back down just for the sake of legality, but overall I think the bike did really well here. With the motor and battery being a 36 volt system, the bike had nice and steady acceleration, and the throttle wasn't too punchy. The speeds in each setting when I was pedaling were pretty evenly distributed, so the amount of power I got when moving up to the next one felt like what I expected. There's also a nice range of power. PAS1 might be really good for someone who's just starting out on an e-bike, while PAS2 through 5 have a bit more oomph to them. All in all, I expected less from the 350 watt motor here, but what I got was a lot of fun. In our range test, we set out to determine how far the Chatham Rev 2 ST could go on a single charge of its battery. We rode the bike in PAS5 until the battery died, and did the same thing in PAS1 to get a high and low end bracket, which turned out to be 13.8 to 31.9 miles. If we pull back to the big picture, the Chatham's results are definitely on the low end when compared to similar bikes, but there are a few good reasons for that. Number one, its battery capacity is the smallest of any cruiser style bike we've tested. Number two, while Retrospec isn't clear about its motor's peak wattage and torque, it seems to put out a bit more power than the average 350 watt rear hub. That means it burns through its battery a bit faster, and since the proverbial gas tank isn't so big, it ends up with a bit less range. That checks out with the math as well. We figured we'd get about 10 more minutes and 5 or 6 more miles out of it from our PAS5 test, but it ended up being a bit less efficient than expected. A lot of things are going to go back to price. I think the range here is pretty well balanced with the bike's low cost, and on top of that, whether you're using this bike as a daily commuter or just cruising around your local bike paths, its range should cover a really long ride or quite a few short ones. Justin tested the Chatham Rev 2 ST's throttle and pedal assist system in our hill test, so I'm gonna pass you over so he can share his thoughts. As always, we took the bike to Hellhole Trail, which has an average grade of 12% over a third of a mile.
Okay, we are on the throttle test for this Retrospec model, and this is the first model from Retrospec that I've hill tested, so kind of curious to see how it goes. They've kind of put these pretty fat tires on this kind of beach cruiser bike, which I gotta be honest, I kind of love. I'm curious to see if it makes it up this hill. I don't have a speedometer, and I don't know how much you can tell. It is going fairly slow. We may not make it. I'm gonna do everything I can for this thing. Come on. I really like the setup, but no, it's not gonna quite make it. So that's as far as it made it on the Retrospec. Again, for beach cruiser, I don't know if that's too bad. We'll go back and see how far it went and kind of check the specs. All right, now on to the pedal test on this Retrospec step-through model. Did not make it up on throttle, but we will see how it does on pedal. Again, don't have a speedometer, so I can only kind of tell you what it feels like. So far, I'm kind of down into 4th gear through this super steep section. I'm not pedaling very hard. So yes, I could go faster, but I'm trying to keep it consistent, on these rear hub motors. Now, so far the sound of the motor has been pretty quiet and fairly consistent. It's not feeling like a, turbo rocket by any means, but I have a feeling it's not gonna have a hard time making it up here. And it's very relaxed climbing. I did raise the saddle up, so I've got good leg extension. These swept back bars and big tires just, I mean, make it feel pretty comfortable climbing. I'll be quiet through this section so you can hear. So yeah, shifted down to second gear, shifted fine. You hear the motor sound pick up just a teeny bit as my cadence and speed get higher there, but still kind of kept pretty quiet throughout. And I have a feeling that, you know, this isn't going to be by any means, you know, a super fast result, but it is a comfortable ride and a comfortable result. Even if you don't put a lot of power down.
Stay over here now.
You're not gonna have a hard time climbing up this hill. So let's go and check the results.
So if I'm being honest, we didn't expect this bike to make it up the hill with its throttle. At least at this point in time, we have not tested a bike with a 350 watt hub motor that has been able to do that. In the pedal test though, the bike did pretty well with a time of 1 minute and 50 seconds from start to finish and an average of 9.9 miles per hour. It wasn't super fast, but it landed right about in the middle when compared to other e-bikes we've tested with 350 watt motors. I felt like our results from this test didn't really do the bike justice, so I took it to a secondary test hill near our office that isn't quite as steep, but it's still not something you'd want to pedal up without a motor helping you out. At that location, I was able to get to the top using just the throttle, so I think in more normal situations, you will have the option to let the motor do all the work. I pedaled the bike up the same hill in PAS 5 where it did just fine, but I tried again in PAS 1 just to see what would happen, and I was really surprised by the fact that A, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in results, only about 1.6 miles per hour and 13 seconds, and B, I could still soft pedal most of the way, so I wasn't straining at all. Most of the e-bikes I've tested have not had that much power in PAS 1, so I think the Chatham Rev 2 ST did a great job. Let's go out for one last spin on the Chatham Rev 2 ST and talk about its ride quality. I'll see you back here again in the studio shortly. All right, we are here on the Retrospec Chatham Rev 2 to show you what it's like to ride. And this is, of course, a cruiser style bike with a nice upright riding position, very casual and comfortable. There's just a single frame size here that fits riders from 5 foot up to 6'2", and not a ton of adjustability here. There's a few inches in the saddle height with your seat post length, and then with the standard style stem here, you can loosen that up and kind of rotate the bars up and down a little bit to change your wrist position. But the base height there is pretty much set. There is no suspension on the bike, but the tires here actually kind of help to solve that problem. Even with the rigid fork and frame, you get some nice vibration absorption from those tires. They are 26-inch by 3-inch street tires made by Compass, and I have them kind of set in the middle of their pressure range, but you could air those down a little bit to give yourself a little bit more of a comfortable ride. But then I do want to show you the motor engagement here. The bike has a 350 watt rear hub with a cadence sensor, so I'm going to bump up to PAS 5, sort of show you how quickly that engages. Just kind of coast, hit the brakes, slow down a little bit, and then I'll move the cranks right now. All right, there it is kicking in. So definitely takes a little bit of time, a few seconds or a few rotations of the cranks. But once it does, there's pretty good power there. So let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio and talk a little bit more. So I mentioned how comfortable this bike was to ride at the beginning of the review, and I just want to mention that again. I think it checks all the boxes for what you'd expect from a cruiser style bike, and I have to say I was really surprised by how cushy the ride felt without a full suspension. Those fat tires made a big difference in terms of comfort and stability, and the rigid frame felt like a bit of an advantage in providing really predictable steering. In terms of fit, I'm 5'11", and I could tell that I was getting pretty close to the top end of the bike's height range, but I did have an appropriate fit with good leg extension, thanks to the 7.5 inches of saddle height adjustment. One area that had some room for improvement was in the bike's motor engagement. I noticed that it took a full 3 to 4 seconds of pedaling for the motor to kick in, and while the bike is relatively easy to pedal without the motor, that felt like a long time. Most e-bikes with cadence sensors take only about a quarter turn of the cranks to engage, where this one took multiple full rotations. And sure, the throttle can help get you moving, but I challenge Retrospec to improve the motor's responsiveness. Otherwise, while I have a wish list of some missing features, including a display, a bell, and integrated lights, I understand that there have to be some trade-offs to keep the price down. I would suggest that Retrospec try to include at least a phone mount so that riders can track ride data and mileage a little bit easier. I do think it's worth pointing out the included accessories again. Retrospec could very easily have cut out the chain guard and the battery-operated lights and just included simple reflectors, so I definitely have to give them some credit. And while they're not available just yet, I'm looking forward to seeing the optional accessories that will make the bike a little bit better suited to commuters. We can talk all day about the spec and performance differences between all the bikes we've tested, but if we don't bring cost into the equation, I think a big portion of the perspective gets lost. The Chatham Rev 2 ST had average to better than average performance in most of our testing, and for a bike that costs only about $900, I think that elevates even the 1 or 2 iffy areas to looking pretty good. At the end of the day, we were pretty impressed with the whole package here, and while this bike is pretty basic, it felt a little more put together than a lot of other bikes in this price range. My coworker Griffin described this bike as white bread, but one that you actually want the recipe for, and I have to agree. There's something different here that shows us that Retrospec knows what they're doing. The Chatham Rev 2 has well-balanced speeds, solid stopping power, and a functional amount of range, but we were definitely most impressed by its hill climbing ability. The fact that you can take it pretty easy when pedaling up a hill in PAS1 is pretty impressive, and it rounds out the bike's casual cruiser feel. So if you're considering the Chatham Rev 2 as an affordable option for some fun evening or weekend rides, or you want to ride to work or school on something that has some personality, we give this bike 2 very solid thumbs up. We'll leave a link to Retrospec's website down in the video description in case you decide to pick one up, and please use that link as it helps us to keep making high quality reviews with no additional cost to you. We'll leave a second link below for our written review at electricbikereport.com, but that about wraps it up. Thanks for liking and subscribing, thanks for taking a ride with me today, and be sure to let us know what you think about the bike. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Retrospec Chatham Rev 2 ST.